He pulled me against his chest, and the world vanished. A surge of forbidden desire, first love, and unbearable emotional tension consumed me. Every intimate moment felt like it could break or heal me. In that heartbeat, our LGBTQ plus romance ignited, reckless and unstoppable, leaving only one truth. Nothing would ever be the same again. The first day of summer felt like a promise. The sun hung low and golden over the city streets, painting everything in warmth, as if even the world itself were conspiring to make this break unforgettable. I had just moved into my small new apartment, a quiet space tucked above a cafe that smelled perpetually of coffee and pastries. The boxes were still half unpacked, the air thick with the scent of fresh paint and cardboard. But it was home, finally. He appeared like an unexpected shadow in the doorway, leaning against the frame with that easy, almost careless posture that somehow made him impossible to ignore. I had met him briefly a week ago at a mutual friend's small gathering, just enough to notice the curve of his smile and the warmth in his eyes. But today, up close, he felt larger somehow, more real, more tangible, like a gravitational pull I couldn't fight. "Need a hand with that?" he asked, voice low, casual, but carrying a weight that made me aware of every breath I took. I swallowed, suddenly aware of the tightness in my chest. Sure," I said, trying to sound nonchalant while my hand shook slightly as I shifted a box toward him. Our fingers brushed accidentally, just for a second, but it was enough to make a spark crawl up my arm, sharp and insistent. He didn't flinch, only offered a small, knowing smile, and I realized I'd been holding my breath. The afternoon drifted lazily around us. I unpacked while he leaned against the counter, half watching, half commenting on my terrible attempts at arranging things aesthetically. We shared small jokes, quiet laughter, and moments of silence so charged that it felt like the air itself was holding its breath with us. It was in those silences that I began to notice the details, the way his eyes lingered on me slightly longer than necessary, the tilt of his head when he was genuinely listening, the small crease at the corner of his mouth that appeared only when he was truly amused. Every glance felt loaded, every accidental touch felt deliberate, though neither of us acknowledged it outright. By evening, the apartment smelled of takeout, and the fading sunlight filtered through the curtains in golden streaks. We were sitting on the floor amidst open boxes, our knees occasionally brushing, our hands reaching for utensils or plates and colliding in brief, thrilling contact. "You're messy," he said lightly, a playful smirk tugging at his lips. "And you're judgmental." I shot back, laughing softly, but my stomach still nodded with the thrill of his nearness. He shrugged, leaning back on his hands, eyes never leaving mine. Maybe I just noticed things. I flushed, looking down at my hands, suddenly aware of how aware I had become of him. There was admiration there, yes, I couldn't deny that, but beneath it was something else, something warmer, something I was only just starting to understand. Desire, curiosity, a pull that made the room shrink around us. We didn't talk about it. We didn't label it. We simply existed in that liminal space, laughing, teasing, brushing against each other in ways that left me dizzy. And when he finally stood to leave, the golden sunlight catching his hair, I realized that I wanted, more than anything, to stop him from going. "I'll see you tomorrow," he asked casually, though his eyes were intent, searching. "Yeah," I said, voice small, almost a whisper, though my heart screamed. Tomorrow. After the door closed, the apartment felt impossibly quiet, the echo of his presence lingering in the corners, in the air, in the spaces my fingers had touched where it had been moments before. I sank to the floor amidst the chaos of boxes, and a single thought hovered insistently in my mind. Something was about to change. Something would come for us, for this fragile, unspoken connection, and I had no idea whether I was ready. But I knew one thing with sudden, sharp clarity. I didn't want to resist it. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the blinds in sharp, warm lines, painting my half-unpacked apartment in shades of gold. My body ached from carrying boxes, but my mind ached more from replaying every moment of the night before. His smile, his eyes, the brush of his hand against mine, that still felt like static lingering in my veins. I wasn't expecting him to show up so soon. Yet, right as I was fumbling with the coffee machine that stubbornly refused to work, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, There he was, hair slightly messy, holding 2 steaming cups like an offering. "Thought you might need this," he said with that half smile that made it hard to breathe. I took the cup, our fingers grazing again, and I felt that same spark ignite. "You read my mind," I murmured, trying to sound casual though my pulse betrayed me. He stepped inside without hesitation, like he belonged there. And maybe he did. We settled into mismatched chairs in the small kitchen, sipping coffee while the city outside stirred awake. The conversation was easy, unforced, like we'd been doing this for years instead of days. He asked about my plans for the summer. I shrugged, unsure. He talked about his mostly vague, half-formed ideas of long drives, music festivals, nights that blurred into mornings. "Sounds like you're chasing freedom," I said softly. He looked at me for a long moment, his eyes unreadable. Maybe I'm chasing something else. The silence that followed was charged, heavy with an unspoken question I didn't dare answer. Over the next few weeks, he became a constant. He'd show up with coffee, or we'd run errands together, or just sit in the apartment listening to music while I tried to put my life into order. It was domestic in the simplest, most tender way. 2 people orbiting each other, never colliding fully, but always within reach. Sometimes, the moments were playful, like when we shopped for groceries and argued over which cereal was better, drawing stares from strangers as though we were already something more than we claimed to be. Or would he tease me about the way I sang under my breath when I thought no one was listening? Other times, it was quiet, sitting side by side on the couch, our knees touching, neither of us moving away, sharing earbuds, listening to the same song, feeling the same rhythm, laughter dying into silence, the kind that hummed with something deeper. I noticed everything. The way his gaze lingered on me just a little too long. The way his hand sometimes twitched slightly when it brushed mine, as if resisting the urge to hold on. The way he leaned in when he laughed, close enough for me to catch the scent of him, warm, clean, with a hint of something sharp I could never name. There were moments when I almost spoke, almost confessed a weight pressing against my chest. But the words always died in my throat, swallowed by fear. What if I ruined it? What if I imagined everything? One evening, we sat on the rooftop of the building. The city spread beneath us like a sea of lights. He had brought a blanket and a bag of chips, and we sat shoulder to shoulder, legs stretched out, the air cooling as the sun dipped below the horizon. "This is my favorite time," he said quietly, "when the world slows down, when it feels like anything's possible." I turned to look at him, the fading sunlight painting his features in soft gold and shadow. "Anything?" He smiled faintly, eyes meeting mine. "Yeah, anything." The word hung between us, thick with possibilities. My chest ached with the urge to lean closer, to close the gap, to test the fragile line we had drawn. But instead, I stayed still, afraid of shattering the moment. We didn't talk much after that, just watched as the stars began to appear, one by one. Yet the silence wasn't empty. It was full of things unsaid, emotions too heavy to name. Later, as we walked back down to my apartment, our shoulders brushed. He didn't move away. Neither did I. Inside, the air felt heavy with the closeness we carried back from the roof. I reached for a glass of water, but my hand shook slightly, betraying me. He noticed. "You okay?" he asked softly, stepping closer, his voice gentler than I'd ever heard it. "I'm fine," I whispered, though it was a lie. His gaze lingered on me for a beat too long, searching, almost knowing. And then, as if realizing the moment had grown too fragile, he smiled and changed the subject. That night, lying in bed, the echo of his nearness clung to me. Every accidental touch, every long stare, every silence that seemed to scream louder than words. It all replayed in my mind like a song I couldn't turn off. And as I stared at the ceiling, my chest tight, my heart restless, one truth burned in me. Something was coming. I didn't know when. I didn't know how. But I felt it in my bones, in the restless rhythm of summer nights and stolen glances. Something was about to change. The days blurred together after that. Late nights, slow mornings, laughter spilling into silence, silence spilling into something that felt dangerously close to longing. He had become part of my rhythm, woven into the fabric of my summer, in a way that felt both comforting and terrifying. We didn't label it. We didn't talk about it. We just existed in it. But I noticed the way my chest tightened whenever his name lit up my phone. I noticed the way my hands ached to reach for his when we walked side by side down crowded streets. I noticed the way the air seemed to thin whenever he leaned too close. One evening, it rained, not the soft drizzle that whispered against windows, but heavy, relentless downpour that soaked us in seconds. We had gone out for dinner, a small diner on the edge of the city, and by the time we ran back to my apartment, we were drenched, breathless, and laughing like children. Inside, clothes clung to skin, hair plastered to our faces. He shook his head, sending droplets flying, and I couldn't help but stare at the way his shirt hugged his frame, at the way his laughter lit up the room, at the way my pulse stuttered painfully in my throat. "Here," I said quickly, fumbling for towels. My hands brushed his as I handed one over, and the contact was brief, but my heart reacted as though it had been struck. We stood there, side by side, drying off in silence. The air grew heavy, charged. His laughter faded, replaced by something quieter, sharper. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, the world shrank to just us. Wet clothes, shallow breaths, an electric pull that had been simmering for weeks. I looked away first. "I'll, get us some dry clothes." My voice shook, betraying me. I left the room, my chest tight, my hands trembling as I dug through drawers for something, anything, to break the tension. When I came back, he was sitting on the couch, towel draped loosely around his shoulders, watching me with that unreadable expression that always made me feel exposed. "Thanks," he murmured as I handed him a shirt. His fingers brushed mine again, slow, deliberate this time, as if testing me. My breath caught. We changed in separate rooms, but when I came back, he was still there, sitting in the dim glow of the lamp. The storm outside hammered against the windows, a steady rhythm that filled the silence between us. I sat beside him, close enough that our knees touched. Neither of us moved away. The tension was unbearable, like standing at the edge of something vast, knowing one step forward could change everything. "Do you ever think," he started, then trailed off, shaking his head. "Think what?" I pressed, my voice softer than I intended. He hesitated, eyes fixed on mine. "That maybe this isn't just what it looks like." My throat went dry. "And what does it look like to you?" The question hung between us, dangerous, fragile. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned back, his gaze still locked on mine, and the silence stretched so long it felt like it might break me. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to confess everything I'd buried. The way his presence had become the center of my days. The way I couldn't stop replaying every touch, every glance. The way my heart ached with wanting him. But the words lodged in my throat, tangled with fear. Instead, I whispered, "Sometimes I think something's happening between us." He looked at me, and for a moment, I thought he might say it, might confirm what I felt, might close the distance that had been torturing us both. But then he laughed softly, shaking his head as if to brush it away. "Maybe," he said simply. The conversation ended there, but the air didn't lighten. If anything, it grew heavier, more charged, as though both of us were holding back a storm of our own. Later that night, after he'd fallen asleep on the couch, I lay awake in the bed just a few feet away, staring at the ceiling. The sound of rain mixed with his steady breathing, and the ache in my chest was unbearable. I whispered into the dark, words I'd never dared say aloud. "I want you." He didn't hear them, but I felt lighter somehow, like admitting it, even to the silence, was enough to shift something inside me. Looking back now, I realized the summer was already changing us, weaving us into something neither of us fully understood. The line between friendship and something more was thinning, thread by thread, and no matter how hard I tried to convince myself it was all in my head, deep down I knew the truth. Something was coming, something that would change everything. The storm passed, but the weight it left behind lingered. After that night, things between us were no longer the same, though we never spoke of it, though we carried on with our routines like nothing had shifted. And yet, everything had. I noticed at first in the silences. They stretched longer, heavy with unspoken questions. Our conversation still flowed easily. Jokes, stories, shared glances. But beneath the surface there was a hum, a vibration that made my skin itch with awareness. When he handed me a cup of coffee in the mornings, our fingers brushed a second longer. When we passed each other in the narrow hallway, his shoulder grazed mine, and neither of us apologized. It was small, almost nothing, but it was everything. One afternoon, we found ourselves sprawled on the floor of my apartment, sorting through the last of the unpacked boxes. He'd pulled out an old photo album I hadn't touched in years, flipping through it with that half-smile of his. "This is you?" he asked, pointing to a picture of me at 12, awkward, grinning with braces, standing too stiff for the camera. Unfortunately, I muttered, burying my face in my hands. He laughed, that rich, unguarded sound that always made my chest ache. "You're adorable." The word hung in the air between us, heavier than it should have been. His eyes flicked up to mine, suddenly serious, as though realizing what he'd admitted. I swallowed hard, my pulse thundered in my ears, but neither of us looked away. It was just a stare, a long, lingering stare, but it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, dizzy from the height, knowing one step forward could mean falling. He broke the moment first, clearing his throat and turning back to the photos. But the tension remained, buzzing like static, crawling under my skin. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face in the dim lamplight, his eyes on mine, the word adorable echoing in my head like confession he hadn't meant to give. The days that followed only deepened the ache. Small moments piled up, his hand lingering too close to mine on the couch, the way his laughter softened when directed at me, the way his gaze flicked to my lips when he thought I wouldn't notice. And I noticed everything. One evening, we went for a walk. The air was warm, the streets buzzing with the low hum of summer nights. We walked side by side, shoulders brushing, the city lights painting us in gold and shadow. "Do you ever feel like you're waiting for something?" I asked suddenly, surprising even myself. He glanced at me, his expression unreadable. "All the time." "What are you waiting for?" He hesitated, eyes dropping to the ground. "I don't know. Maybe something I'm not supposed to want." The words hit me like a blow. My chest tightened, my throat went dry. For a moment, I thought he'd said it, thought he'd named the thing that had been building between us. But he didn't. He just kept walking, hands shoved into his pockets, leaving me reeling in the wake of his honesty. Later, back at the apartment, the silence between us was unbearable. I busied myself with pointless tasks, washing dishes that weren't dirty, straightening books that didn't need straightening, anything to avoid facing him. But eventually, he crossed the room, standing too close, his presence filling the air. "You're quiet," he said softly. "I'm tired." I lied, refusing to meet his gaze. His hand brushed mine as he reached for a glass on the counter. The touch was accidental, meaningless, but it sent a shock through me so strong I nearly dropped the plate in my hands. I looked up then, finally meeting his eyes, and in them, I saw it, the same confusion, the same hunger, the same fear that had been tearing me apart. Neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. The silence said too much. Finally, he stepped back, clearing his throat. "I should go," he muttered, though his voice was strained, almost reluctant. I wanted to stop him. I wanted to grab his hand and say, "Don't." But my body froze, my courage failed me, and I let him walk out the door. When the latch clicked shut, I pressed my forehead against a cool surface, my chest aching with all the words I hadn't said. Because the truth was undeniable now. Something was happening, and it terrified me. The night after he left, sleep refused to come. I kept replaying every second. The way his hand had brushed mine, the way his eyes had locked onto mine, the way his voice had cracked when he said he should go. It was too much, too close, too undeniable. The next morning, I told myself I'd act normal. I'd bury it. I'd laugh. I'd talk. I'd pretend the silence between us wasn't heavy with all the things we weren't saying. But when he showed up, hair messy, coffee in hand, eyes searching mine as if he'd been awake all night too, the act collapsed instantly. We barely spoke as we sat at the table. His hand drummed nervously against his cup. My eyes flicked to it, then away, then back again, until finally I realized I wasn't listening to a single word he was saying. I was just listening to the sound of his heartbeat in my head, thundering louder than my own. Later that day, we went out again, wandering through the park as the late afternoon light bled gold across the grass. Kids ran past us, laughter ringing in the air. Couples sat tangled together on benches. And for a fleeting moment, I wondered if anyone looking at us thought we looked the same, like something more than friends. He stopped walking suddenly, crouching to tie his shoe. When he stood, he was closer than before, too close, his shoulder brushing mine, his breath warm on my cheek. I froze. He didn't move away. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The world carried on around us. Laughter, footsteps, the rustle of leaves, but it felt like we were trapped in a bubble of silence, pressed together by something invisible and relentless. "You keep looking at me," he said finally, voice low, almost a whisper. Heat rushed to my face. "No, I don't." "Yes, you do." He leaned in a fraction closer, his eyes searching mine. "Why?" I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. My body was screaming at me to step back, to laugh it off, to say anything that could defuse the moment. But I didn't. I just stood there, staring at him, caught between terror and longing. He moved first. Not a kiss, not yet. But his hand brushed mine, slow and deliberate. His fingers grazed in my knuckles as though testing how far he could go. I sucked in a sharp breath, my whole body tense, waiting. The touch was nothing and everything, just skin against skin, the most ordinary contact. But it felt like a confession, a promise, a crack in the wall we'd built between us. I didn't pull away. He didn't either. And then footsteps. A jogger passed us, close enough to jolt me back to reality. I yanked my hand back like I'd been burned, heart hammering, eyes darting around as if the whole park had seen. He straightened, stuffing his hands into his pockets, his expression unreadable. "Sorry," he muttered, too quickly, too quietly. The word cut deeper than it should have. Sorry, as if it had been a mistake. As if the moment I'd been aching for had been something he regretted instantly. We walked in silence after that, the tension unbearable. Every step between us felt like a mile. Back at the apartment, the silence followed. He dropped onto the couch, running a hand through his hair, while I stood by the window, staring out at nothing. Finally, he spoke. "We can't keep whatever this is. It's not." "Not what?" I snapped, turning on him before I could stop myself. "Not real, not allowed, not worth it." His jaw tightened. "Dangerous." The word hung in the air like smoke. Dangerous. As if wanting him. As if needing him. As if standing too close to him could unravel everything. And maybe it could, but the way he looked at me then, raw, torn, desperate, told me the danger wasn't enough to stop him. Or me. I crossed the room slowly, my heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. He didn't move, didn't breathe, just watched me approach with wide, unblinking eyes. When I was close enough, I stopped, inches between us. My hand trembled, wanting to reach for him, terrified to try. He whispered, "Don't," but his voice shook, and before I could stop myself, my fingers brushed his again. This time, he didn't pull away. This time, neither of us did. The silence between us screamed louder than words ever could. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that whatever line we'd been pretending to keep, we had already crossed it. The night stretched long and restless after that moment on the couch. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, every nerve in my body still burning from the brush of his hand against mine. I could feel it even now, like his touch had branded me. I told myself to stop, to bury it, to forget. But when I closed my eyes, all I saw was him, the curve of his smile, the way his voice cracked when he whispered "don't," the storm in his eyes that mirrored my own. The next morning, the air between us was heavier than ever. He was already in the kitchen, pouring coffee, when I emerged from my room. His hair was messy, his shirt rumpled, like he hadn't slept either. Our eyes met for a split second, and that was enough. Everything we weren't saying flooded the silence, too loud to ignore. We didn't talk much that day. Instead, we circled each other like shadows, careful but restless, both of us trying and failing to pretend nothing had happened. By evening, the tension had become unbearable. We ended up on the rooftop again, a place that had quickly become ours. The city sprawled beneath us, lights glittering like stars, the air warm and thick with the hum of summer. He leaned against the railing, staring out at the skyline. "I shouldn't be here," he said quietly. The words hit me like a knife. "Then why are you?" He turned to me, eyes sharp, voice low. "Because I can't stay away." The honesty in his tone cut through me, leaving me breathless. I wanted to move closer, to close the gap between us, but my feet stayed rooted to the ground. "Do you know what you're doing to me?" I whispered. His gaze darkened. "Do you know what you're doing to me?" The silence that followed was unbearable. I felt like the whole city had gone still, holding its breath with us. Then, slowly, deliberately, he stepped forward, one step, then another, until he was right in front of me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off his skin. I couldn't move. My chest rose and fell too fast, my throat dry, my heart pounding against my ribs. His hand lifted, hesitant, trembling, and brushed against my jaw. The touch was so light, so tentative, that I thought I might be imagining it. But then his thumb traced the corner of my lip, and my whole body shuddered. "This is wrong," he whispered, though his hand didn't move away. "Then why does it feel right?" My voice cracked, desperate. We were too close now. One breath, one heartbeat, one decision away. I could see every detail of him. The flecks of gold in his eyes, the uneven rhythm of his breath, the way his lips parted like he was already halfway to closing the distance. And then it happened. Not a kiss, not fully, but his lips brushed mine, barely a ghost of contact. It was tentative, almost accidental, but it was enough to set me on fire, enough to undo me completely. The shock of it sent us both reeling. He pulled back instantly, eyes wide, breath ragged. I staggered back a step, my own chest heaving, my skin blazing where he touched me. Neither of us spoke for a long time. The silence was deafening. Finally, he shook his head, his voice hoarse. "We can't." But his eyes betrayed him. They burned with the same hunger, the same need, the same terror that gripped me. I swallowed hard. "Then tell me you don't want it. Tell me you don't want me." The words slipped out before I could stop them. The vulnerability of them made me feel naked, exposed, but I couldn't take them back. He froze, his lips parting, his eyes wide. For a moment, I thought he might say it, thought he might give me the rejection I was daring him to deliver. But instead, he looked away, jaw clenched, fists tightening at his sides. "I can't," he whispered. The admission gutted me. He couldn't deny it, and that made it so much worse. The moment shattered after that. We both backed away, retreating into silence, into fear. But the damage was done. We had crossed a line we could never uncross. Later, lying in bed, I pressed my fingers to my lips, still burning from that fleeting touch. Shame clawed at me, whispering that it was wrong, that we were playing with fire. But beneath the shame was something stronger, thrill, desire, the undeniable truth that I had tasted him once, and I wanted more. And I knew with absolute certainty that it was only a matter of time before we broke completely, because whatever this was, whatever we were, it wasn't stopping. It was only beginning. The rooftop moment haunted me for days. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt again the brush of his lips against mine, so fleeting, so fragile, yet strong enough to split my world in two. I couldn't forget it. I didn't want to, but he avoided it. We carried on like nothing had happened, both of us clinging to the illusion of normalcy. Coffee in the mornings, shared laughter, long evenings listening to music. All of it wrapped in a thin veneer of denial. But beneath the surface, the air was razor sharp, cutting us both with every stolen glance, every brush of skin that lingered too long. The tension built until it became unbearable. One night, the heat was oppressive, thick and suffocating. The window was open, but no breeze came through, only the hum of the city below. He sat on the couch, sprawled out like he owned the place, shirt clinging to his skin, hair damp at the temples. I sat on the floor, pretending to read, but the words on the page blurred into nothing. Finally, he spoke. His voice was quiet, almost lost in the drone of the night. "We can't keep doing this." I looked up, heart seizing. "Doing what?" He met my gaze, eyes burning. "This, pretending, acting like we don't know what's happening." The book slipped from my hands. My throat went dry, but I forced the words out. "And what is happening?" He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, really looked like he was stripping me bare. My chest ached under the weight of it. Finally, he whispered, "You know." The silence that followed was deafening. I wanted to deny it, to laugh it off, to push it back into the shadows where it had lived all summer. But I couldn't, not anymore. I stood, crossing the small space between us before I could second-guess myself. My hands shook, my knees trembled, but I kept moving until I was standing in front of him, his face tilted up to mine, his eyes wide and unguarded. "Say it," I whispered, voice breaking. "Say what you want." His jaw tightened. He looked away, then back at me, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Not fear of me, fear of himself, of what this meant, of what would happen if we stopped pretending. "I can't," he said hoarsely. My chest cracked open. "Then I will." Before I could lose my nerve, I leaned down, closing the distance, pressing my lips to his. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't hesitant. It was raw, desperate, years of silence and longing exploding all at once. His breath caught, his body tense beneath me, but then he kissed me back. The world fell away. His hands gripped my shirt, pulling me closer until I was half in his lap. My fingers tangled in his hair. The kiss deep and messy and hungry, filled with everything we'd both been holding back. My heart raced so fast, I thought it might burst. Every nerve lit up, every inch of me alive in a way I'd never felt before. When we finally broke apart, gasping, foreheads pressed together, the silence returned. But it wasn't the same silence. This one was heavier, yes, but honest, unshielded, undeniable. I closed my eyes, whispering, "Tell me this is wrong. Tell me to stop." He didn't. Instead, he pulled me against his chest, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. His voice cracked when he whispered, "I can't." We stayed like that, tangled and trembling, until the weight of what we'd done sank in, until reality clawed its way back. Because it wasn't simple. It wasn't just a kiss. It was crossing a line we could never return from. And as much as I wanted to lose myself in the warmth of him, in the safety of his arms, I knew this was only the beginning. Something had broken open between us, and now we would have to face it. The fear, the shame, the danger of being seen, of being known. For the first time, I wasn't sure if love was enough. But I knew one thing with brutal clarity. I didn't want to let him go. The kiss should have ended things. It should have broken the spell, snapped us back to reality, reminded us of everything at stake. But it didn't. Instead, it pulled us deeper. The days that followed blurred together, each one thick with stolen moments and silent admissions. A brush of his hand against mine when no one was looking, his knee bumping mine under the table. The way he lingered in doorways, like leaving me alone was the hardest thing in the world. It was dangerous, reckless, impossible, but it felt inevitable. One night, after everyone else had gone to bed, I found him sitting in the kitchen, head bowed, hands gripping the edge of the counter, like he was holding himself together by sheer force. "You can't sleep either?" I asked softly. He looked up, and in his eyes I saw everything he'd been hiding. The torment, the longing, the fear. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. I crossed the room slowly, heart hammering in my chest. The silence between us was thick, fragile, ready to shatter at any second. When I stopped in front of him, he reached out without hesitation, grabbing my wrist, pulling me closer until I was standing between his legs. "I can't stop thinking about you," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I've tried. God, I've tried." The words hit me like a blow, knocking the air from my lungs. My hand trembled as I reached up, brushing his cheek, my thumb catching the edge of his jaw. "Then don't," I whispered back. The way he kissed me this time was different. Not desperate, not messy, but slow, deliberate, aching with tenderness. His lips moved against mine like he was memorizing me. Like he was terrified I'd disappear if he let go. I melted into him, letting the world dissolve, letting his arms be the only place I existed. For a moment, there was no fear, no shame, no weight of consequences. Just us, just this. But then, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway. We froze. His grip on me tightened as my chest seized, panic flooding through me. Whoever was, they were close, too close. The footsteps paused just outside the kitchen. A shadow stretched across the wall, long and unmistakable. My heart pounded so loud I was sure it could be heard in the silence. Then, after what felt like an eternity, the shadow shifted. The footsteps retreated. A door clicked shut down the hall. I collapsed against him, trembling. He held me tighter, his breath uneven against my hair. "That was too close," he whispered, his voice raw. "I don't care," I whispered back, though my body betrayed me, shaking with the fear of being caught, of being seen, of the truth spilling out where we couldn't control it anymore. But he was right. It was too close. We pulled apart reluctantly, both of us shaken. He wouldn't look at me, and I knew why. Because if he did, if he saw the fire in my eyes, he'd lose what little control he had left. "This is going to destroy us," he said finally, voice hoarse. "Or save us," I countered, though I wasn't sure I believed it. The silence stretched between us again, heavy and suffocating. And then he whispered something so soft, I almost didn't hear it. "I'm scared." The confession cut through me. I wanted to tell him I was scared too, that I had no idea where this was leading us, that every second with him felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. But instead, I reached for his hand and squeezed it, grounding us both. "Then be scared with me," I said. His eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw something shift. Not just fear, surrender. That night, lying in my bed with the door closed, I could still feel him everywhere. The ghost of his lips on mine. The weight of his arms holding me like I was the only thing keeping him alive. I knew we couldn't keep going like this. The world outside our small bubble was waiting, ready to tear us apart if it found out. But inside, in the quiet of the night, one truth rang louder than any fear. I loved him. And no matter what happened next, I couldn't take that back. Some things can't be undone. The kiss, the touch, the way he pulled me against his chest, all of it carved into me, impossible to erase. In the days that followed, we didn't talk about it. Not really. We still laughed, still moved around each other like before, but there was a new weight in the air, a silent truth neither of us dared name aloud. At night, when the house was quiet, I'd lie awake replaying every second. The feel of his hands gripping mine, the warmth of his breath against my skin, the way his voice cracked when he whispered he was scared. Sometimes I wondered if he was lying in his bed doing the same. We didn't confess. We didn't make promises. Maybe we were too afraid of what it meant. Or maybe we knew the world outside these walls would never understand. But there was no regret. Not for me. Not for him. Because in those fleeting moments, we had touched something real. Fragile, forbidden, but alive. Something that made me believe love wasn't about being safe. It was about being brave enough to let go, even when the world was watching. And if I never said aloud, if the truth stayed locked in my chest forever, I knew this. He was the first person who made me feel seen. And that will never fade. If you've made it this far, I want to hear from you. Describe this story in one word in the comments. Confused, heartbroken, exposed, seen, loved. Which word is yours? And if you've ever carried a secret like this, a love you couldn't say aloud, a moment that changed you forever, share it below. Someone else might need to hear it. Your story matters. Your truth matters. So, tell me, what did this one make of you?